My sister didn't ask if I could help with my niece's sweet 16. She sent me a payment demand. At 6:14 on a Wednesday morning, before I had even found my glasses, Jenna dropped a message into the family group chat that said, "Need $7,200 wired by noon for Lily's party balance. Don't make this awkward in front of everyone." Under it she attached a PDF with a banquet hall logo, a due date circled in red, and 3 photos in a row like exhibits in a trial. A silver dress hanging on a closet door. A wall of blush balloons shaped into an arch. A ballroom with chandeliers so bright they looked expensive on purpose. Then my mother added, "Claire, please handle this before Lily gets hurt." That should have been the part that made me angry. It wasn't. What made my stomach go cold was something Lily had whispered to me 3 weeks earlier in the shoe aisle at Dick's Sporting Goods while her mother was up front paying for mascara and protein bars she said were for school. Lily had been pretending to compare sneakers when she leaned toward me and said very quietly, "If Mom asks you for money for my birthday, call my dad first. Please. Don't tell her I said that." So I stared at the message on my phone, at the bright red circle around noon, and I knew 2 things at once. 1, my family had decided my bank account was part of the party plan before I ever saw a single invitation. And 2, my niece had already warned me there was something under the floorboards. Welcome back to Real Family Voices. If you come from a family where love starts sounding suspiciously like an invoice, stay with me, because this one began with a sweet 16 and ended with 6 adults realizing a teenage girl had been the only honest person in the room. My name is Claire Mercer. I'm 37 years old, and I supervise payroll for a trucking company outside Indianapolis, which means I spend 50 hours a week making sure other people's numbers match what they say happened. I have learned that math is never what rattles people. It's what the math proves. Other people open a bill and start with the greeting. I go straight to the total. So that morning I looked at the $7,200 first. Then I looked at the due date. Then I looked at the line that said remaining event balance. And then I did what I always do when my family wants something from me. I sat very still and tried to figure out whether this was an emergency, or just another crisis dressed well enough to get let inside. Jenna is my younger sister by 2 years. She is pretty in the kind of way that seems effortless until you realize it costs other people money. She laughs easily, cries faster, and has spent most of her adult life surviving one dramatic month at a time. When things go wrong for Jenna, they don't go wrong quietly. They arrive with mascara, screenshots, and a story that makes everybody else feel selfish for checking details. And for a long time I was exactly the right audience for that. There was the year Lily needed braces and Jenna was short on the deductible. The month her transmission failed in the Aldi parking lot. The summer camp balance. The field hockey fees. The temporary electric bill. The 2 months of rent after the divorce when Jenna swore she would catch up the second tax season came around. Every single time it came wrapped in the same language. It's really for Lily. I hate asking. You know I do it for you. That last sentence is the family version of perfume. Covers a lot. I used to say yes quickly because quick yes feel generous. What they actually are, most of the time, is fear moving faster than thought. Fear that a child will lose out. Fear that your mother will sound disappointed. Fear that if you stop being useful, people will finally have to decide whether they actually enjoy you. I had never liked that last possibility much. By 6:30 that morning the group chat had become what our group chat always becomes whenever money is involved. My mother with her soft little mediator sentences. My Aunt Paula with a prayer hands emoji. Jenna adding, "I shouldn't even have to beg family for my daughter's one big day." Then a picture of Lily at a dress fitting, trying to smile into the mirror. If you've ever been the dependable one in a family that mistakes dependability for unlimited access, you already know what came next. Nobody asked whether I could do it. They discussed only how fast. The truth was I couldn't. That $7,200 was sitting in a savings account on my phone with a very boring label. Fall tuition. After 11 years of taking night classes 1 or 2 at a time, after every detour and every family emergency and every semester I postponed because something more urgent showed up wearing somebody else's face, I was finally 3 courses away from finishing my accounting degree. I had registration the next week. If I emptied that account, I wasn't just covering a party. I was pushing my own finish line back again for a celebration no one had even bothered to discuss with the girl it was supposedly for. But families like mine don't hear that kind of sentence. In families like mine, if one daughter has been responsible for long enough, her goals stop sounding like goals at all. They start sounding optional, decorative, nice if there's money left over after everybody else's catastrophe. So instead of explaining myself to people who had already decided my money was emotionally public, I texted Jenna privately. Can you send me the full budget? Not no. Not I can't. Just the most adult question in the world. And she answered in 14 seconds. Are you serious right now? I said yes. I wanted to see the breakdown. Hall catering, DJ, dress, everything. If I was being asked for $7,200 by noon, I figured I had earned at least the right to know what noon was buying. She left me on read for a minute and a half, then replied with a voice note instead of text, which is what Jenna does when she wants her emotion to arrive before her logic. Claire, this is so embarrassing. Lily already knows we're finalizing stuff. Ben's barely helping, Mom can't cover it, and I cannot believe I'm having to justify my daughter's birthday like I'm applying for a mortgage. There are people who lie badly. You can hear them reach for the wrong word. Jenna lies beautifully because she starts with the true part. She was embarrassed. Ben and my mother had both been involved. She did feel cornered. The problem is that a person can be cornered and dishonest at the same time, and my sister had built half her adult life in that overlap. I listened to the note twice. Then I went back to Lily's whisper in the shoe aisle. Call my dad first. I hadn't talked to Ben in almost 6 years, not since the divorce split the family into stories instead of facts. According to Jenna, he was unreliable, cheap, selfish, impossible to co-parent with, and somehow also the reason she still couldn't get ahead. According to my mother, he never really understood how fragile Jenna is. According to Lily, who never said much against either parent, he was just dad. That morning I opened my contacts and looked at his name for a long time. Then my mother called. I let it ring twice before answering, which in my family counts as almost hostile. Please don't drag this out, she said without hello. Lily's excited. Jenna's beside herself. You know how these things snowball. I asked if she had seen the budget. A pause. Then, does it matter? It is hard to explain to people who did not grow up in my house what a sentence like that can do to your spine. Because of course it mattered. That was the entire point. But my mother didn't mean the budget. She meant the system. Does it matter how we got here if you can solve it? Does it matter whether it's fair? If saying that aloud makes everybody uncomfortable? Does it matter what it costs you if we can all get through lunch with our version of ourselves still intact? I said, it matters to me. She exhaled the way mothers do when they want to remind you they had a harder life than whatever you're about to object to. Claire, your sister is not asking for a vacation. This is Lily's sweet 16. Some things you just do. That sentence sat with me after we hung up. Some things you just do. In my family, that has always meant some things I just do. I wish I could tell you I became brave right there. That I saw the pattern, stood up and changed my life by breakfast. I didn't. What I did first was open my banking app and search Jenna's name. The transfers went back farther than I expected. 480, 800, 250, 1,000, 700 for uniform stuff, 900 for school trip, 500 for just until Friday, which is the funniest memo in the English language when the money left your account 3 years ago. I added them in my head because once you work payroll long enough, arithmetic starts happening to you whether you ask for it or not. By the time I got to the end, Jenna had taken $18,940 from me over 7 years. $19,000 if you round the way families do when they want to make exploitation sound friendlier. And that number didn't even include Christmases where I bought Lily's bigger gift because Jenna's a little strapped right now, or the field hockey stick I shipped directly to the school because my sister said she was overwhelmed and forgot. It did not include the hotel room I booked for Jenna the weekend she said she needed space to think after the divorce, and then posted photos from a winery with 2 friends and a man named Trevor. It did not include exhaustion. There should be a line item for exhaustion. At 9:03 I called Ben. He answered on the 4th ring with the distracted voice of a man who had grease on his hands and no reason in the world to expect his ex-wife's sister before lunch. Claire. I almost hung up. Not because I had changed my mind, but because old family loyalties die stupidly. They die reaching for the wrong door. Hi, I said. I need to ask you something, and I need you to just answer straight. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Okay." I told him Jenna was demanding $7,200 for Lily's party balance, and that Lily had asked me to call him first. I said I wasn't looking for drama. I just wanted to know whether he knew about the balance and what exactly had been paid. There was no explosion. No outrage. Just silence, followed by one sentence that changed the entire shape of my morning. "Claire, I already paid the venue in full 10 days ago." I didn't say anything. He kept going, calmer than I was. He said Lily had come to him in tears because Jenna was telling her certain things would have to be cut if Dad didn't step up. He hated the idea of his daughter feeling embarrassed in front of her friends, so he called the hall himself. He paid the remaining hall balance directly by card. Not to Jenna. To the venue. He also covered the DJ deposit because Jenna said my side of the family was handling the rest. My side of the family. Like we were not all attached to the same girl. I sat down at my kitchen table so fast my chair scraped the floor. Ben must have heard it because he stopped and asked if I was still there. I just suddenly felt like I had opened a closet and found another room. He said, "I can send you the paid receipt if you want." "Yes," I said. Then, because sometimes truth arrives one insult after another, he added, "Jenna told me you refused to help because you think sweet 16ths are spoiled. There are lies told to get money. And then there are lies told to make sure the money feels righteous when it arrives." That one stung more. My phone buzzed while he was still talking. An email landed in my inbox from Ben with a subject line that said Crescent Hall receipt. I opened it. Paid in full. I looked at the hall logo. Same one from Jenna's PDF. Same event date. Same venue address. Same event name. Lily Holt Suite 16. $0 due on the hall. Ben told me one more thing before we hung up. He and his parents weren't invited. Not officially. Jenna had told Lily they would do something separate with his side because the guest list was too tight. The ballroom held 120 people. Ben knew that because he had asked before paying it off. I thanked him, and he said something that stayed with me long after the call ended. He said, "Whatever's happening over there, don't let Lily be the cover story for it." That was it. One phone call. 9 minutes. And the whole nice little narrative my family had constructed for me that morning split open down the middle. Because once the hall was paid, the $7,200 was no longer a sacrifice I was being asked to make for my niece. It was something else wearing my niece's birthday like a borrowed coat. I texted Jenna again. Ben sent me the paid in full receipt for the hall. What exactly is the $7,200 for? This time she took 6 full minutes. Then she called. No voice note. No text. An actual call, which meant the performance had left the group chat and entered the danger zone. I answered, and for the first 10 seconds she denied the obvious with a confidence that would have impressed me if it weren't attached to my family. "He paid one part," she said. "You never get the whole story with him." I let her talk. Photographer, flowers, cake, custom backdrop, limo, favors, makeup artist, chair covers, security, the deposit on the after-party suite. Her words came out so quickly they lost weight halfway through. Not because these weren't real party categories. They were. That was what made them useful. Real things can be stacked into unreal totals very easily if you count on other people feeling tacky for checking. So I asked the next question. How much of this has already been paid by somebody else? She went quiet. Not hurt quiet. Calculating quiet. Then I heard it in her voice. That tiny sag that comes when somebody realizes denial is no longer the fastest exit. "Claire," she said, and suddenly she sounded tired instead of offended. "If I tell you the truth, are you going to make it worse?" That is not a sentence a person asks when the truth is harmless. I said, "Try me." What came next was so ugly and so ordinary that it would have sounded fake if I had put it in a movie. Trevor had lost his job 2 months earlier. Jenna was behind on rent. Her SUV note was late. The landlord had posted a notice, but Lily hadn't seen it because Jenna yanked it off the door before she got home from school. She had used Lily's party because nobody opens their wallet faster than family when a teenager's milestone is involved. She told my mother she needed help with the dress. Told Ben the hall was at risk. Told Aunt Paula the photographer needed a deposit. Told me the party balance was due by noon. She said she wasn't trying to scam anybody. She was trying to keep her life from blowing up the same week as her daughter's birthday. Then she said the sentence that told me exactly how long this had been normal in her own head. I was going to put it all back after tax refund season. Borrowing has a funny way of always speaking in future tense. I asked her if Lily knew. She started crying for real then, the sloppy, furious crying of somebody who knows the truth sounds worse out loud than it did inside their own mind. She knows enough to look at me like I'm a loser, Jenna said. Is that what you want? For my daughter to think I'm some pathetic mother who can't give her one good thing. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the paid receipt on my phone. This is the part where people think anger is the strongest feeling in a story like this. It isn't. The strongest feeling is usually recognition. Because the second Jenna said that, I understood the whole machine. She was not really trying to buy Lily a magical birthday. She was trying to buy herself one night without shame. One room full of lights where nobody could point at the overdue notices, the jobless boyfriend, the shrinking options, the father she had spent years claiming never showed up when in fact he had just paid for the ballroom and wasn't even invited inside it. The party wasn't a gift. It was camouflage. And camouflage always costs the nearest honest person extra. I told her I was not sending the money. She changed fast then. No tears. No shame. Just heat. So you're really doing this. You're really going to let Lily's birthday collapse over money. You absolutely have. There it was again. The family fiction that because I had money set aside, it was morally available to anyone with a louder emergency. I said, I have money for my tuition. That is not the same thing as having money for your lies. Then she hung up on me. If the story ended there, it would have been painful and clean. One lie uncovered. One boundary drawn. Roll credits. Families are never that efficient. By noon Jenna had gone back to the group chat, and she did exactly what people do when the truth isn't on their side. She moved the audience. She wrote that I had turned cold. That Ben had manipulated me like always. That I was punishing Lily to prove some point. My mother called twice and left one voicemail so disappointed it could have curdled milk. Aunt Paula sent, the child is innocent. My stepfather, who speaks 4 times a year and chooses each occasion badly, texted, some things matter more than school. I read that one 3 times. Some things matter more than school. I wanted to ask him where that philosophy had been when I was 20 and waiting tables after night class, or 26 and covering Jenna's light bill, or 32 and dropping statistics because my mother needed help with her dental crowns and we all knew which daughter would get asked. But people who have spent years benefiting from your silence often mistake it for agreement. So I stopped explaining. Instead, I drove to my mother's house that evening because there are conversations you cannot have in a group text without letting the most dishonest person in it control the weather. My mother lives in the same ranch house I grew up in, with the same cream curtains she keeps promising to replace and the same kitchen table where every serious family decision eventually lands in front of the one daughter expected to absorb it. Jenna was already there when I walked in. Of course she was. Her eyes were puffy. My mother looked 10 years older than breakfast. Lily was nowhere in sight, which I noticed immediately and disliked. Nobody offered coffee. That's how I knew we were past courtesy. Jenna started before I sat down. Tell Mom what Ben told you, since apparently he's your new source now. I said I would, but first I wanted Lily in the room. My mother flinched like I had said something obscene. She does not need to hear this. And that right there is how families keep their ugliest habits alive. We hide the truth from the person being used in the name of protecting her from the truth about how she's being used. I said, this is about her. She gets to hear it. A minute later Lily came down the hallway in an oversized sweatshirt and socks, cheeks blotchy, phone clutched in both hands. 16 in 3 days and already exhausted in the specific way daughters get when they realize their mothers are capable of making them responsible for adult self-respect. I will tell you something I learned that night. Humiliation changes shape when a child walks into the room. Up until then, Jenna had still been selling a version of herself. The wronged mother. The overwhelmed single parent. The misunderstood sister. But when Lily sat at that table and looked at her mom with scared, grown-up eyes, the whole thing got stripped down to what it was. A woman asking everybody else to help her avoid being seen clearly by her own child. I handed my phone to my mother and showed her the hall receipt. Paid in full. Then I read out the email date. Then I told them exactly what Ben said he had covered and exactly what Jenna had told me that morning. Nobody interrupted. Jenna stared at the table like it had personally betrayed her. My mother read the receipt twice, once as a mother and once, I think finally, as a person who had run out of ways to prettify what her younger daughter was doing. Then Lily spoke. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a tired teenage voice saying, "I told you not to ask Aunt Claire." Every adult in that kitchen turned to look at her. She kept going because once the honest person starts, everybody else usually gets quieter. She said she never wanted the ballroom. She had asked for dinner with friends, a bonfire, and maybe one night at a hotel with the girls if it fit the budget. She said she found the rent notice in the trash 2 weeks ago. She said her mom told her not to mention it because people judge. She said she asked her dad for help because she thought if the hall got canceled her mother would blame her forever. And then the worst line of the night came out of my niece's mouth. "I don't even care about the party anymore. I just need everybody to stop using me to talk about money." There are sentences that should break the adults in a room. That one should have. My mother put her hand over her mouth. My stepfather looked at the refrigerator magnets like they might explain something. Jenna burst into tears again, but different ones this time, less offended and more cornered. "Do you all think I wanted this?" she said. "Do you think I like being behind? Do you think I enjoy begging my own family? And here is where I am going to be fair to my sister, because being fair is not the same thing as giving in. No, I do not think she enjoyed it. I think she was ashamed. I think she was scared. I think shame and fear had been driving her for so long that she could no longer tell the difference between asking for help honestly and manufacturing a crisis nobody could morally refuse. I think she had learned from our family as much as from her own bad choices, that if she attached enough emotion to a request, the practical questions would go to sleep. That still did not make it okay. A hard life does not turn deception into love. I looked at Jenna and said the quietest, truest thing I had in me. If you needed rent money, you could have said rent. The second you put it in Lily's mouth, it stopped being help and became hiding. She winced. Good. Some truth should sting on the way in or nothing changes. My mother, who had spent my entire life believing peace was whatever arrangement kept the loudest person from escalating, turned to me and asked the question I think she had wanted to ask since breakfast. "So what happens now?" I almost laughed, not because it was funny but because it was so perfectly our family. The problem could involve lies, favoritism, debt, public manipulation, a teenager caught between divorced parents, and years of financial boundary violations, and still somehow I would be the one asked for the plan. There is a reason the reliable daughter gets tired. People hand her their panic and call it trust. I said, "Now the adults tell the truth." Then I laid out the only terms I was willing to live inside. I was not giving Jenna cash. Not for the party. Not for the rent. Not for Trevor. Not against a tax refund that did not yet exist. I would help Lily directly if Lily wanted a small birthday she could actually enjoy, and I would do it in the open with receipts and a hard budget, not whispered promises and emergency language. If Jenna needed real financial help beyond that, we could talk about a payment plan for rent with actual numbers on paper, maybe with my mother contributing too if she chose. But the era of me being treated like a private relief fund because I happened to answer my phone calmly was over. Nobody clapped. Nothing healed in a beam of kitchen light. Jenna called me self-righteous. My stepfather said I was making everything too formal. My mother cried because crying is how some women keep from choosing. Lily stared at the table and rubbed the edge of her sleeve between her fingers until I thought the fabric might disappear. And then, finally, somebody chose. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't Jenna. It was Lily. She looked up and said, "Can we please just do the bonfire?" The whole room went still. Not the ballroom. Not the arch. Not the mocktail bar or the photo booth or the hotel suite after. Just the original thing she wanted. A fire pit, close friends, music, esmores, and enough peace that nobody had to perform being okay for Instagram. Jenna looked wounded by that. And I understood why. Because when your child chooses simplicity in front of witnesses, what she is really refusing is the fantasy that spectacle can save a bad season. But Lily wasn't being cruel. She was being 16 and smarter than the rest of us. So that is what we did. Not that night. Not all at once. But within 48 hours, after more crying and one dramatic accusation from Aunt Paula that children remember when adults are cheap, and a truly ridiculous text from Trevor about how families should show up without judgment, which I ignored on principle. The giant party died the death it should have died in the planning stage. Ben got a partial refund on the extras he had not approved. My mother paid 1 month of Jenna's back rent directly to the landlord instead of handing cash to my sister, which offended Jenna and improved her life in exactly the same stroke. I covered the food, the projector screen, and the park shelter reservation for a backyard-style bonfire at Ben's sister's place out in Plainfield where there was enough land for kids to laugh without walls involved. Ben handled the fire pit and playlists. Lily picked 3 desserts from Costco and 1 cookie cake from the grocery store because, in her words, nobody actually cares about fancy cake after the first picture. That line alone should be taught in economics. Jenna came late to the bonfire and left early. I don't tell you that to make her the villain. I tell you because shame hates low lighting and honesty. She looked at those folding chairs and paper lanterns and the girls in hoodies taking blurry selfies by the fire, and she could not quite figure out where to put herself. The evening did not need her version of triumph. It just needed her daughter to be 16 with people who loved her enough not to rent a personality around her. And Lily was happy. Not posed happy. Not camera happy. Actual happy. The kind that reaches her shoulders before it reaches her mouth. She sat on a blanket with her friends, sneakers tucked under her, laughing so hard at one point soda came out of her nose. Ben's mother brought out hot chocolate in a stock pot. Somebody started singing an off-key version of Landslide. Lily got frosting on her cheek and didn't care. Nobody there had been instructed to admire anything. Nobody there was pretending the family was richer, happier, or more whole than it was. It was the first honest celebration we'd had in years. And because life likes irony almost as much as families do, it cost less than $800. Not $7,200. $800. I thought about that for a long time after. About how close we all came to burning $8,000 so one woman wouldn't have to admit she was in trouble. About how often families confuse extravagance with love, because extravagance photographs better. About how many times children end up wearing the emotional debt of adults who cannot stand to look ordinary. A week later I registered for my fall classes. I did it on a Tuesday night at my kitchen table with the same account that had been nearly volunteered out from under me. When the confirmation email hit my inbox, I cried harder than I had during any part of the Sweet 16 disaster, which is embarrassing but also true. Relief often waits until the paperwork clears. Jenna and I did not speak for almost 2 months except for one text about Lily's school pickup when my mother had a dental appointment. When she finally called, there was no big apology speech. No movie ending. She just said, "I'm on a budget app now and I hate it." I laughed. Then after a long pause she said, "But I guess hating it is cheaper than lying." For Jenna that was practically poetry. We are not all fixed. I don't think families ever are. I think sometimes they simply get told the truth enough times that the old tricks stop working as well. My mother still uses the phrase "keep the peace," when what she means is keep the women from confronting the pattern. My stepfather still thinks a direct question is borderline rude. Aunt Paula still believes every party should look more expensive than the people in it. But Lily changed something. 3 months after her birthday, she asked me to help her open a savings account from the money she made babysitting and working Saturdays at a frozen yogurt place. We sat in a branch office with a woman named Denise who had silver nails and no patience for sloppy forms, and Lily slid her first deposit across the desk like it mattered. Because it did. On the way back to the car she said, "I don't ever want money to feel like a secret." I looked at her and thought, there it is. That's the real inheritance. Not the arch. Not the dress. Not the chandelier ballroom her mother wanted strangers to envy. Just a 16-year-old girl learning early that a number can be looked at directly and survived. That wanting less can sometimes mean understanding more. That people who love you should not need your birthday as cover for their panic. And me? I am still learning what it means to belong to a family without financing its denial. That's slower work than people think. When you have spent years being useful, saying no can feel like vandalism at first. Like you are damaging something sacred. But sometimes what you are really damaging is access. And access, when it has gone unchecked long enough, will dress itself up as tradition and call you cruel for locking the door. If you are the one in your family who always gets the just this once call, hear me clearly. A child's milestone is not a moral crowbar. Someone else's embarrassment is not a bill you owe. And the moment a grown adult borrows a kid's face to get to your wallet, the kindest thing you can do may be the one thing everybody will call unkind. If this hit a nerve for you, tell me in the comments about the first boundary that changed your whole family's weather. And subscribe to Real Family Voices because around here the quiet one usually isn't weak. She's just the first one who finally checked the numbers.